Hello, my charmed ones, and welcome back to my channel for another video. Now, before you freak out, I know you're thinking, Alexis, the quality of this video is very poor. And that is because I am traveling right now, but I wanted to record this video for you guys because I had this wonderful idea to talk about this book that I recently read that's incredibly popular. So I'm really working with a very minimal setup today. I'm so sorry that the quality isn't great. I've got a couple of different lighting things in front of me. There is a fan overhead, so you might hear some kind of little swirling or tinkering noises from that. But I really think that today's conversation is going to be very valuable for you guys. So I would recommend that you stick around for this video because I think this is going to be a quality of the information is going to be a little bit better than the quality of the video, and you might find it to be valuable if you've been thinking about or seeing things about this book and you've been curious whether or not you think you should check it out. Now, one last thing I'll say is that you guys know I wear glasses, but because of these lights, there's going to be those halos in my eyes. So I'm going to try to record this video without glasses for that reason. I have my iPad here with my notes so that I can kind of follow along so I can see them a little better if I kind of get lost. I have all of my thoughts about this book laid out and I want to share it with you. Okay, so first things first, let's get all of our cards out on the table. We're talking about the book, The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. This is a very popular productivity book that I have seen referenced for very many years, and I've just finally actually gotten around to reading it. So the gist of this video, as you can tell from the title, is why I don't like the 12-week year as a female productivity guru. And you have to keep in mind that I am talking about this as my experience as someone who's been working in this planning and productivity community for a long time. I run a business within this community, helping predominantly women, right? So today I want to really discuss why I don't agree with or recommend this book, specifically for busy women that are juggling multiple priorities in their life. Now, I don't mean that to say that I didn't enjoy this book. I did find a lot of value in its practical mindset strategies to help you take action. However, I have some concerns with the 12-week year's planning structure for goals and the toxic hustle culture mentality that I see this book feeding into. So if you do happen to be a man who is watching this in my community, you may actually find these strategies in this book more aligned with your lifestyle, and I'll explain why later on. But there are some nuanced reasons why I don't think the 12-week year is as helpful for busy women. First, I want to make it clear that I'm not discouraging anyone from reading this book. It is a fine read, and I'll leave you a link down in the description if you want to check it out for yourself after hearing my thoughts. My goal here is to inform my audience about the potential pitfalls of this strategy, especially for women who may pick this book up, read it, and then have trouble implementing and then blame themselves, right? That is something that I am here to prevent. So, I've known about the 12-week year by Brian Moran, like I said, for a while now, but I only recently decided to pick it up. So the concept of this book, right, and the concept of quarterly planning isn't new to me. It was first introduced to me through Todd Herman, who is a performance coach in his 90-day year brand. So that isn't a book, that is a course, the 90-day year. I never actually took that course, but I was very familiar with his work. I looked into it for a while, as I was researching different productivity strategies. So that's really where I was introduced to the concept of 90-day or quarterly or 12-week planning. So by no means is the 12-week year necessarily a complete unique or revolutionary planning idea. So another reason I was hesitant to read this book is that as a rule, I try to avoid productivity philosophies that are written from a male perspective. Now, although you guys know I appreciate works like David Allen's Getting Things Done and Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I've noticed over the years that many of these strategies don't translate well for women. And there's two main reasons for this. First is that most productivity books that are written by men focus on career and business, which is just one aspect of life. And this is because society often tells men that their career is the most important priority, while women face societal pressures to prioritize family, home, health, their appearance, and community. So this makes it a little bit more challenging for women to apply business-focused strategies to other areas of their life. And the second reason is that women naturally have more priorities to juggle. while men may focus on a clear priority like work, women are managing, like I said, those multiple priorities, and it makes it harder to execute on these male-driven strategies. So these issues are why I started doing the work that I actually do today. Years ago, when I began sharing planning strategies from male productivity gurus like David Allen, I noticed that women struggled to execute them due to the sheer number of priorities that they did manage. So I adapted what I learned and created my own systems and strategies to better serve women. So let's go ahead and discuss an overview of the 12-week year. I'll start by sharing what it is that I do agree about the book, right? Then we'll discuss what I don't agree with. And then finally, I want to explain to you why my methodology for goal setting, which is called You Got Goals, I think is better suited for women than what you're being presented here in the 12-week year. So let me give you just like a quick recap of what the 12-week year is about. So 12-week year is about setting goals on a quarterly basis for 12 weeks at a time. And the idea of why this is impactful is something that is really, I'm very familiar with. It is the idea that, like, especially in business, let me keep this in mind, we're talking about business with this strategy, because again, we're talking about a male productivity person who is focused primarily on results for business. So in a business context, it's not unusual at all for business people to set annual goals for themselves. And what they end up doing is they will go and make slow and steady progress throughout the year for the first 3 quarters of a year. And then magically, the pressure, right, of a time crunch of the 4th quarter hits, and they get done more in that final quarter than they've done all year long. This is a very common thing to play itself out in business over and over and over again. So the idea from Brian Moran is that, well, what if we just planned every goal as a 12-week goal? Then you would get done, in a year, technically maybe like 4 times as much as you would get done in a typical year if you were doing annual goal planning. So that is the gist of what this philosophy is about. And he goes into a lot of different strategies and like sub strategies, right, to help you actually plan and get things done. I'm not going to get into every nitty gritty. If you want to learn more about those things, if this book does sound interesting to you at the end of my recap and you want to read it, I don't want to spoil anything for you. I really just want to talk about big picture things that I noticed in this book. Okay. So that is the gist of what the book is about. So let's get into what it is that I do agree with in the book. So I've kind of broken these out into, it looks like I have 5 topics of things that I agree with. The first thing that I agree with is the idea of lack of execution. And it's the idea that he talks about is that most people don't execute on their goals, not because they don't know what to do, but it's because they don't feel a sense of urgency. So this is something that, again, is incredibly common for men and for women. When we don't have a sense of urgency for our goals, we actually tend to put them off for longer. We don't take action when we should, right? So this is why, in any goal setting methodology, it is important to give yourself a sense of urgency, due dates, blocking out time, right? Because without that urgency, we are just going to drop the goal. How many goals have you set at New Year's and you kind of gave up on them a few weeks into the year? This is incredibly common. It's because the goal itself seems so far away that we kind of lose interest. The urgency is just not there. So that's definitely a point that he made that I really agree with. The next point that he made that I also agree with is the idea of Parkinson's law. Now, I've talked about Parkinson's law with you guys on this, in this channel before, and I'm trying to remember, I don't think he actually calls this Parkinson's law, but I understood it to be a Parkinson's law the way that he was explaining it. So Parkinson's law states that a task will take as much time as you give it to complete. So let's say you set a goal for the year. Let's say you set a goal and you give yourself an entire year to get it done. And maybe you don't necessarily need a whole year, right? It's something that you could create like a quarterly goal for instead, and you could get it done sooner, right? If you do set a goal and you give it too much time, it's going to take you that much time to actually get it done because you've given yourself that really wide margin. Versus if you were to set like a shorter time frame for the goal, then magically what may have taken you a year to do at one point can now take you like 6, 12 weeks to complete instead. So Parkinson's law is something that we always want to keep in mind, is that, time will expand or contract, for a task based on what you actually allot to it. So I definitely agree with this idea, right? If you give yourself too much time to work on something, then again, you lose that sense of urgency and it makes it harder for you to get it done, or you taking up extra time that you didn't necessarily need. So that's another thing that I totally agreed with. The next thing he talked about that I really agreed with was the idea of having a compelling vision for your goals. So having a strong vision helps you to actually act. This is something that is very big within my philosophies and inside my Charmed Life Mastermind. This is why we do things like create vision boards every year and do vision casting. And I have a lot of different mindset activities that help you to visualize your goals in different ways. Because when you have that strong visual connection to your goal, it gives you that drive to execute. Another point that I really love that he made was on weekly planning. So both Brian Moran and I agree that having weekly plans is a crucial part of planning. And you guys have heard me talk about this before, that 24 hours, a single day is not enough time to get it all done in. You can't expect yourself to move everything in your life forward in a single day. But when you zoom out and you look at a week, you suddenly have 168 hours to manage and allocate to the different priorities in your life. And that is a much more feasible time for you to use to move things forward. So thinking beyond the day and into a week, I love it as a basic unit of planning, and so does the author of the 12-week year. And then the final point that he did make that I really agree with is that commitment is action, right? So he talks about if you are committed to a goal, that is going to help you create action. To take action, you need to be committed to your goals. Your goals really have to have a very strong why, right? You have to really feel a sense of commitment and ownership to your goals. And he talks about a couple of different ways that you can kind of elicit this in the book. But the idea of taking action being a commitment, absolutely, right? So it's not as simple as saying that we're going to set a goal and then we feel compelled to act. We really need to have a deep-seated commitment in order to take action. So those were some of the big picture ideas that I really did agree with in the book. Now I want to talk about some of the things I didn't agree with. The first thing that I didn't agree with is a sense that I got in the book of hustle and burnout culture. So the 12-week year really embodies a sense of hustle culture because it encourages you to have this sense of consistent urgency, which can be exhausting if you're always in a sprint. Remember, I told you that kind of the premise of this book for the author was this idea that in business, you will set a goal for the year and you will make more progress in the fourth quarter than you will the whole year. So what if we just kind of planned quarterly and we had that urgency and we were constantly always sprinting, always hustling? We would get, 4 times the results, way more results if we planned that way, right? The thing is, that is exhausting. That is toxic hustle culture, right? The idea that we need to always be sprinting and hustling and pushing, that to me, that is what he is promoting in the book, which is one of the major reasons why I don't agree with this strategy. The next thing I don't agree with is that in that constant hustling, right, he really fails to acknowledge that when you put that sort of pressure on your nervous system, that will actually cause your nervous system to shut down. And he doesn't talk anything about the nervous system at all. This is the sort of things that I think about in my philosophies when I'm trying to help women take action when they feel like they're stuck in freeze states, or they feel like they're overwhelmed and they can't take action, or they're overthinking. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video that was all about how to get yourself to take action, if you're overthinking or you're a perfectionist. And essentially the gist of that video was that we get triggered, our nervous system gets triggered into a fight or flight response. And there are actually multiple different responses that happen with our nervous system when it is triggered, right? That actually cause us to not take action, or to start taking action and then not complete the things that we're doing. So I'll leave you guys a link down to that video if you haven't seen it. It's definitely worth watching. It's definitely, I think, very enlightening to understand how your nervous system is very often contributing to why you're setting goals or saying you want to do things or making plans, but then not actually executing. And I feel like with this constant hustle idea and this constant sprinting that's inside of this book, I really feel like that is going to cause a lot of people to trigger their nervous systems, right? Their sympathetic nervous system is going to be triggered, and it's going to cause them to actually shut down and not make any progress. The next thing I didn't agree with is that, this isn't something he brings up. It's, again, something that I noticed from his strategies, is that these strategies really are more suited towards men than women, right? And so we're going to call this the difference between masculine and feminine energy. And the difference is actually in kind of in two layers. There is like a physiological reason why certain strategies work for men and not women. And then there is a practical reason, I think, also, that's influenced by society for why men and women work differently. So, when we think about the physiological differences between men and women, the male energy cycle is 24 hours. That means that their hormones cycle in a 24-hour, cycle, right? And female hormones take 28 days to cycle, right? Which means that men have this energy they wake up with every day. They have the energy to spend, they go to sleep. And of course, we're talking about in an ideal world where they're getting enough sleep and eating proper nutrition, things like that. They are rested overnight. And then in the morning, theoretically, they have the same amount of energy every single day to put towards their work. Now, women are not the same, right? We know that because our hormones cycle in 28 days, that there are certain weeks of the month where we have high energy. And yes, we could get so much done and we're super productive. But then there are weeks where our hormones, right, are leading us to be a little bit more relaxed, are kind of telling us to kind of slow it down. And the problem with a constant like 24/7, 12 week at a time hustle sprint that this book is kind of showing you is that, we know as women that when we keep pushing and pushing and pushing during those times when our cycles are telling us, our hormones are saying that we need to take a rest, this is when we're doing a lot of damage to our bodies, right? Because we're pushing through when we shouldn't be. So that's the physiological reason or the biological reason, why there's a difference between strategies that work for men versus women. But then, of course, like I said, there's that societal aspect, that practical aspect that, men are really only focusing on one primary thing, one primary priority being work. And women are told by society to manage all these different priorities, like everything else except for work is what women are being told and conditioned to focus on, right? So yes, these strategies, this 12-week year is more for business, right? But it really is harder to translate into the other more social and relationship sort of goals and priorities that women happen to be the default caretaker and manager of, right? Okay, so that is the difference between masculine and feminine energy that I do not agree with. That's kind of being brought up from this book. The next point is this idea of capitalism over quality of life. Like I said, this approach in this book benefits businesses, not necessarily individuals. So it's really asking you to hustle constantly, right, throughout the year, which is going to cause you to sacrifice your quality of life for productivity. So that is something I absolutely don't agree with. Like, I don't think that we should be hustling ourselves all the time for business, right? Because that's just giving into this toxic hustle culture, and it's really prioritizing businesses and capitalism over people's individual quality of life and work-life balance. The next thing I don't agree with is the idea that he brings up of uncomfortable work. Now, Moran suggests in the book that impactful work has to be uncomfortable. He essentially is saying that the most impactful things that we will do, in order to achieve a goal are going to be uncomfortable. And that is something that I fundamentally disagree with. Like, I believe that when it comes to things that we need to do to get things done, to hit our goals, I always think that we can find a better way that works for us without causing unnecessary stress. That is a major, thing that I talk about in my philosophies. It's a major point. If anyone has been following me for a while or you're inside the mastermind, you guys know we always talk about identifying the work that it is that we're trying to avoid that feels hard and understanding how we can shift our perspective or shift the task so that it no longer becomes hard, that we're choosing to do a task that actually works to our strengths and our advantages and things that we're willing to do so that we can reach a goal. Like I say all the time, I know this is such a morbid analogy, I guess, but there's many ways to skin a cat, right? There's many ways to achieve any goal. And so the idea that the most impactful work has to be uncomfortable is something that I just fundamentally disagree with. And then finally, I wanted to bring up that in this book, I noticed that there was limited female representation, right? The book really only used one example of a woman who was executing this method. And of course, she was, using this method in terms of her performance at work, right? So all of the examples that they gave in the book were really focused on people using this system for business, for health goals, and for I would say minor relationship goals, right? many of these goals are performance-based, right? Which really doesn't align with the types of priorities and goals that I find that women set. Like, actually, I was talking to one of my girlfriends about this book when I was reading it. And I told her, when I was telling her about my idea to actually film this video, and I was saying, like, I thought it was so crazy that, like, one of the goals that he was highlighting for, one of his case studies in the book was a man who wanted to improve his golf score, like his golf game. And I'm like, I understand that that is a reasonable goal for anyone to set. Like, that's totally fine. People can set whatever goals they want. But I'm just thinking that, like, that sort of a goal is so far removed from the types of goals that women are setting for themselves on a regular basis while they're managing so many priorities. And it really, to me, highlighted the idea that this book was written by a man for men, by a business person for business people, in order to not necessarily intentionally promote hustle culture, but that's what it does unintentionally. And for that reason, for all these reasons that I've said so far, I do not agree with the strategies in the book. There were a lot of great points made in the book. 100%, a lot of things I agreed with. In fact, I would say that most of the things in the book I actually agreed with in terms of like minor practical strategies and mindset. But these overarching themes were the reasons why I don't think that it's really well suited for women. So next, I want to talk about, finally, let's kind of just start wrapping this up. I want to talk about my You Got Goals method and why I think that that is a better method for women to be using in order to set their goals, to map them, right, and to get things done for the year. So in my You Got Goals method, we focus on setting annual goals with quarterly milestones. So we do set goals for a whole year, right? And we use quarterly milestones to break out these longer term goals so that we have a more balanced approach that integrates urgency and accountability into our day-to-day life. So that we do have a little bit more of a sense of urgency because we've broken down big goals into milestones so that we always know the next target that we're aiming to hit, right? So the next reason I would say that my You Got Goals method is better is it's much more attuned for managing multiple priorities. So my annual goal setting process allows you to manage multiple priorities. And if you guys are familiar with it, you know that we start off our goal setting process with identifying the 5 priorities that we want to focus on and prioritize for the year, right? So we start with our priorities, multiple priorities that we know we need to balance and juggle, and then we map out our goals according to our priorities across the year so that we're actually being intentional and choosing optimal times to be working on certain goals across the year, because we know that, situations are not going to be the same for us in like January as they are in August, right? There are different things going on in our lives that's just the nature of life being very seasonal, especially the way that women are managing priorities and lots of different things going on. So my You Got Goals methodology is much more attuned to this idea of helping you balance and manage multiple priorities, but still setting your goals intentionally and making the time for them across your year. Next, the You Got Goals method really keeps long-term planning in mind, right? So annual goals let you plan further ahead than just 12 weeks, which is often necessary for, like I said earlier, the types of goals that women set. I can just see in my mind like so many examples of goals that, like, if you're just focused on the next 12 weeks and you're not looking ahead and like kind of breaking a big goal down into small portions that you can achieve over quarter over quarter, then you have an opportunity to get yourself overwhelmed or actually get off track. So I think it really is important that you do see the vision for the long term, and then you break down your planning quarterly. And that is something that we do as part of my Charmed Life Mastermind, right? We set our goals with You Got Goals at the beginning of the year. We have that longer term vision for the year, but then we actually plan in depth on more of a quarterly, monthly, and weekly basis, right? We're not trying to plan a full year in advance, but we do need to see the direction we're going for the full year in order for things to stack up nicely and to make progress seamlessly. And then finally, my You Got Goals process integrates mindset. So my method includes mindset work to help you feel like that positive sense of urgency and accountability, and that, again, that connection to your vision rather than the negative pressure of having a time crunch. I would so much rather you be executing out of a sense of feeling positive and feeling like you're capable and feeling like you have a balanced plan that's not overwhelming you versus this sense of constant urgency where you have to push and hustle in order to get things things done, right? So that is like the last point I wanted to make for what makes You Got Goals, I think, a better option for most women. So that is everything I wanted to say about the 12-week year and why I don't really recommend it as a female productivity guru who leads other women and helps them manage their productivity and planning. So if you found this discussion helpful and you want to dive deeper into productivity and planning strategies that are designed specifically for women, I invite you to join my Charmed Life Mastermind. Inside the mastermind, you'll get access to my complete productivity and planning philosophies, including the You Got Goals workshop series and the You Got Goals planner. These resources are tailored to help you set and achieve your goals in a balanced, sustainable way. Now, if you're just getting started and you want to focus on annual goal setting and planning, you can purchase those workshops separately. But when you join the mastermind, you unlock so much more. A resource library with hundreds of classes, inserts, workbooks, recordings, and more. Plus, you'll benefit from 3 live calls per month, along with on-demand coaching and accountability from me within our private group coaching community. If you're ready to take control of your goals and create a life that truly reflects your priorities, I'd love to welcome you into the Charmed Life Mastermind. Check out the link in the description to learn more and join us today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this style of video and like to see more book reviews from me, let me know down in the comments and maybe make your suggestions for what books you might want me to give my opinions on. I would absolutely love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. And for more of the behind the scenes of my productivity life and business, make sure you're following me on Instagram at MissTrenchcoat. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button for more awesome videos by me. And until next time, bye-bye.